First thing we're going to do today is take steps to winterize your sprinkler system for outdoors. First thing you're going to do, very simple step. Find your controller. It's typically located in your garage. It may be outside. Simply turn it to the off position. The only thing you'll see is the time on the clock still there. This prepares the system for the next step that we're going to do, which is going to go and actually drain the system so none of your pipes explode in your sprinkler system. Step 2, find your PVB, pressure vacuum breaker. What you're going to want to do, this is in an on position right now. And what Jose is going to show you is how to get the water out of it. So Jose, go ahead and demonstrate.
Okay.
See how these are perpendicular? That means that the gates are open, the water's flowing. So the first step is a simple twist. And then you'll have 2 outlets here. Just turn it gently and you'll see water come out. And the second one, that's the water bleeding out. Once that is complete, the water is now out of your system. It's important so you don't if you have water in your system during a hard freeze, this will crack. Even though it is metal, it will crack. And unfortunately, you typically have to replace the entire unit and not just repair it, which is why it's extremely important to have all these pipes wrapped. Typically what we use is insulation like this. It simply wraps around the pipe, and then you can follow that up with using just pipe wrap that we use to wrap it up. And this will greatly help insulate it from the cold temperatures. But even with this on, if you don't drain it, you still run a chance of having this crack. This is going to be fixed and repaired about $500. And then an added piece of precaution is once it is settled, this is a cover, an additional cover that you can get. It's an insulated backflow bag, heavy duty. It's up to very cold temperatures. Simply undo it, Velcros, slide it over the unit. And with your system properly insulated, having it drained, and having this extra protection, you're probably in pretty good chance you're going to survive this weather that's coming through this time. In all honesty, anytime you get below freezing, you should insulate and you should cover up and you should drain your system. It's going to take a very extreme heavy freeze like we had a year or two ago, where it gets down sustained 18, 19 degrees. Even in this, it's difficult to survive it sometimes. But precaution is, if you hear there's going to be a freeze, it's best to drain your sprinkler system, make sure it's covered up. You know, it can't hurt. And so you might as well be prepared as opposed to spending another $500 or $600 to have it repaired after the fact. The last heavy freeze that we got, we ordered in a lot of PVBs to have them in stock, and probably had 25 or 30 of them, and I ran out the first day. And it was taking anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get PVBs. And although you don't really think about that when it's January or February, but if you think 6 or 8 weeks out, that turns into March or April, which is when the spring season is coming. It's critical to have your plants, you know, getting their proper water, and no one wants to be out there hand watering it, because if this doesn't work, your entire system doesn't work. If you recall, when Jose turned the screwdriver and you saw the water come out, that's the water that, if it wasn't drained, resides within this area. And that's why you'll still get the crack, because the water's sitting in there, it'll freeze and it'll come into an ice block, it expands and it'll crack all of this steel. If you take care of this, this is the root cause of damage that you're going to get from a freeze. If you properly do this, you should be fine. But there aren't any things. You don't have to go to your individual heads and make sure that they're run out or anything. This is the source. This is the root cause of any issue you're going to have. If this is protected, your sprinkler system should be in good shape.
How often do you get called out to fix those during the hard freezes?
Unfortunately, quite a bit. You know, because people, they're thinking about their pets, they're thinking about their plants, and sometimes you don't run your sprinkler system a lot in the wintertime, and it's one of those things you might forget about. And so people are like, oh, my sprinkler system's off. I haven't run it in a month because it's been cold, it's wintertime, but they don't realize that water is still sitting in here. And so even though they're not running their system, the water's sitting in here, and during that freeze, it will freeze and expand and crack. So even though you're not using your sprinkler system, sometimes you got to realize there's water in it. It has to be drained before a freeze. The next step in the process after you winterize your sprinkler system is to go and look around everywhere you have exposed pipe with water spigots that are outside your home. What you'll see is this pipe that's leading into your house. It's critical to make sure that that's covered. This is where you could end up having issues within your house, inside your house, if you don't get this wrapped. Now, they do make specific covers that fit over it. Not everyone has those lying around, and a lot of times you're in a hurry, so you can use a towel. You can also use a plant covering, which we're going to show you. And it doesn't have to be extremely thick, just needs to have a good buffer around it. And the key is not just getting the handle, but getting the pipe that's leading into the house. That's the most important part of it to get, because you really want to prevent any type of intrusion into the house. If that water breaks, you can have issues inside your house. So what we're using here is just a plant covering cloth. Again, you can use specifically made items that you can get at a hardware store. You can use a beach towel. You can even use a pool noodle. If you don't have anything sitting around, you can cut a pool noodle and wrap it on there and tape it on. Also, if you recall, we showed you some pipe tape that we used around the PVB. Again, that tape can be used to make sure that you've got this insulated on your fountain, on your faucet as well. It's a very simple process. Just have it on there, make a nice connection with the tape, and this will insulate issues that you could potentially have that could intrude into your home. If this burst, not saying it would happen, but what could happen is the water begins to leak, it gets into the walls of your home, you have sheetrock damage, you could have floor damage, and especially if you're out of town and you don't know and something like that happens and you return home and you got an inch or two of water in your house, you know, this is important. And so make sure you go around and get this done in all the different the water spigots around your home. I'm kind of like a belt and suspenders type of guy. It doesn't hurt to be prepared. And even if you say, hey, it's only going to be 32, maybe it's only going to be 30, you never really know what the weather's going to do. It can end up being much colder, and it could be for a longer duration. And so it's much easier to come out after a winter event and unwrap a pipe than it is having to do work inside your home of repairing pipes after a freeze. So I would just say, you know, go ahead and be aggressive on kind of what you do, so that way you don't have to take care of things after the fact. The next thing is make sure that you have something to cover your plants with. What we have here is a breathable plant covering. You can buy them Home Depot, Lowe's, etc. The key is to make sure you don't cover your plants in plastic. If you cover your plants in plastics, if it's prolonged coverage, they can dry out, they can suffocate. So it's always good to have something breathable. These are specifically used for cold weather events. And we're going to wrap one plant right over here. The key is to make sure that you have a good coverage around the root base. Also, it's always a good idea to water your plants prior to wrapping.
Really?
Not like 30 minutes before, but maybe an hour or two before. That helps the plant's root system insulate better if there's water already. And if you weren't able to do that prior to this event, if you remember, we did have some rain come through with this storm, so the water's still in the ground. But in the future, in any type of event we may have where a storm doesn't come through, it's important. Water your gardens, water your plants, get that nice base to insulate it, turn your system off, make sure all your faucets are covered around the house, cover your plants. And when you cover your plants, make sure you have something. What we use, it's really like a sod holder. And when you put it in, you just simply push it in through this, goes right through here, which is very lightweight, goes into the ground. You can get a box of these for a few dollars at, again, any hardware store. If you don't have these, not a lot of people have these laying around. A brick, a heavy stone. Typically what we'll do sometimes is we'll take maybe some of this chop block that's around here, just remove a piece, just pull a piece off, right? Take it over, put it on top of there. Yeah, so if you don't have those, So lots of different ways, but the key is, you can tell it's a little windy right now. It's going to get windy later. If you don't have these down, you're going to end up, they're going to be in a neighbor's yard. They're going to be hanging out everywhere. Just make sure you got something to hold it down. If you don't have those little spikes, a rock, a piece of chop block, a brick, anything like that will do the trick for you.